Just another minute or two to come in, and then we'll get started. Just another minute or two to come in, and then we'll get started.
Alongside the restored dune. The rich history of American beach plus the ecological and functional value of the dune system are two real opportunities to educate. You can educate the new long-term residents as well as visitors. Building awareness of this unique and fragile ecosystem and the reason American beach exists in the first place will go far in raising sensitivity. The most visited parks are those that offer opportunities for a sense of enclosure and for expanse. Plantings and structures such as the pergola can provide a sense of security and at the same time allowing for the view toward the ocean and the broad expanse of Banana Dune. Increasing pedestrian and bicycle routes on Amelia Island is a long-standing priority in the county. An idea that is a possibility is to propose and close Ocean Avenue to vehicular traffic. Access could be provided to residents who need access, but only walkers and bikers would pass along that portion of Banana Dune. The Nassau County-owned parcels inland from the seaside parcels are an environmental opportunity. The function and ecological value of the dunes is enhanced with restoration of the missing secondary dune and the reconnection of the Nana Dune to the primary dune along the shoreline. If we would do something of this sort, it would be representative because the secondary dune would be interrupted by the roadways. But it would remind the community at large what the area looked like before development. This restoration would be a visual reminder for us, but it would also be an actual wildlife corridor for gopher tortoises and other wildlife. Now this slide shows a concept of what the park could look like. It is a concept. The brown kind of swirl would be a restoration of its secondary dune. They wouldn't be as high as the secondary dune. This would be impossible in this space. And DEP has a lot of guidance on what we would be planting that would keep it in character and would be the native plants along the dune. So if you were sitting against the building at the pergola, with your back, say, looking back to the building, looking south, you could look out into the labyrinth. You could look out over to Nana Dune off to your right. Off to your left would be the dunes and the sky and the sounds of the ocean. Coming into the park, if you see the red arrow, you walk in, the primary route would be under that pergola or around, looping a little bit further south to come up onto the ABA ramp and boardwalk that is off the veranda. The secondary circulation is represented by the smaller dots. Would weave, that's the one I mentioned, could weave through any kind of demonstration garden, go to the labyrinth, and alongside that dune. The open space in the center, lots 4 and 5, would be an undeveloped park also. That would not be a spot to add any kind of equipment. It would not, maybe some benches could be there, but it would also could be a gathering spot for slightly larger groups that could not be accommodated in a park, a passive park, such as the one south of Eric's Rendezvous. The idea of a park, a passive park south of Evans Rendezvous The ground would be covered. There wouldn't be that open space for running across. It's covered with plantings, it's covered with paths, covered with a labyrinth. We're looking forward to working with the community to create a wonderful park, and any feedback that you have, we appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Appreciate it. Before I open it up, whoa, turn it off. I wanted to also.
I have it off on the table.
Okay. Oh, I was doing that. Ow. Okay. Yeah. Before we open it up for comments and questions, I wanted to also recognize our IT people and our facilities people for all the assistance they provide us today, and reiterate what a special place this is and how we're looking forward to working with all of you to recognize the character of the neighborhood and work with you to preserve that. If I can get someone with a microphone to walk around, I think it would be one of the planners. You might want to do that, Suzanne or Abby. Don't all volunteer. You can raise your hand and want to hear what you have to say. Yes, sir.
One of the issues that you have to be concerned about when you talk about parks on the premise, not being negative, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Jacksonville has done that on a number of occasions, and it became sleeping spots for the homeless, and it turned into that kind of an event. This lot out here for some time was pretty much homeless and people storing and parking and doing all that. Will the regulations be in place so that you will be able to use this as a park and not as a staging site for the homeless?
Suzanne, you want to?
I probably should have mentioned that in my presentation, is that one of the keys and important factors of managed park. And by managed, it means it has restrictions for what's allowed in the park, both by signage. It will also be under the jurisdiction of the sheriff. The police would be around. And one thing that's been found with parks that are in small communities or communities where they're close by, they end up being self-controlled very, very often. This is a dense area of people. There's always people walking around, people looking out the windows, people see things. And when you see something, it's easy to take care of a situation. I think this is also a very private sort of spot. I know you talked about a lot of people coming through, but I think that the community will have its eyes wide open to a park like this, as well as the county.
Thanks, Dan. And I would only add that park design that emphasizes the ability to be able to see through it and not to have so-called hiding places. That's pretty standard in park design. Anyone else?
As the county considers that concept, I would assume it's Parks and Rec. So then, would their budget increase to necessarily be able to take care of the park? We talk about plannings and things like that. Has that been considered relative to ongoing budgets, not just original setup, but ongoing budgets of maintenance and being able to beautification to keep the park up?
Along with the park and every park that the county does adopt or take into their, they either do it themselves or they accept, comes a management plan. And in order to run a good department, you would need to have that management. Parks and Rec is undergoing, and I'll let Fab speak to a little bit more about that. Parks and Rec is going through some planning stages and considering that for all of its parks.
Thanks, Dan. I'll add to that, which is we are in the middle or toward the end of developing a comprehensive parks master plan. And what this essentially does is provides kind of a long-term method for taking care of the existing parks and planning for new parks to meet the growth and the development in the county. It is online, we can provide this to you, but essentially I agree, maintenance is an important part of the cost. So part of the planning for this park will be the annual maintenance and what will be needed to do to keep it looking fresh.
One of the advantages we have here is it is such a natural area that any of the proposed plantings should, and I would strongly suggest, be things that are low maintenance plants, native plants that you do not need to go out, talk and constantly take care of. Now, I mentioned demonstration gardens, and that was an idea raised by the community. Ideas of what you could plant here, and if the UF and the IFAS group, the cooperative extension, would be the persons that, or the group, that could be engaged with that. And they have a high volunteer effort. They take care of the gardens that they plant. That would be another community, potentially community involvement.
To be on a block-by-block basis to look at parking needs, where the parking is happening, where it's not happening, how it can be better organized, maybe possibly the need for sidewalks. I mean, there's a lot of things to be considered. So I think that we have to balance a potential park versus, no pun intended, other parking needs. And that's something that the master plan process will do. I mean, I don't see us moving forward on a park concept until we have better planning accomplished.
I agree.
So my question is about the pergola. Is this an open roof pergola, and will it have a ground where you can do like outdoor concerts or something like that? What is the vision from?
Well, remember, this is, all these are all ideas, so nothing is written in stone yet. A pergola unit can be closed, it could be open. I guess the point I was making would not be an extension of the veranda of the building. It would have to be freestanding. So its design would be something that could accommodate needs. What you're suggesting is to be able to sit under and be protected from the rain, perhaps, or the sun is one of the crucial things we're thinking of, but that would all come with the final design.
Good morning. I have a question on zoning. In terms of the proposed zoning, how would it work in people being grandfathered in, properties grandfathered in at a certain time, or is it all based on permit requests?
That's a great question. That's the term we call vesting. And when you get vested, essentially you're grandfathered you're subject to the rules in place now, and you can move forward even if there's been ordinance changes. Typically, vesting is accomplished by submitting plans to the city, going to the Development Review Committee, meeting with staff, and because what this means by state law essentially is that you have put effort and resources into a plan for your property, and therefore you can proceed under the existing rules regardless of what is going to be adopted in the future. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it does, and I'm just trying to gauge in terms of potential impact. I mean, it could be that so much is grandfathered in that these proposed changes may not really affect that many properties here. So in fact, less consequential. The other thing I want to ask you about is the commercial versus residential conversation seems to have been ongoing for a little while now. What is the delay or the impediment to that choice? I mean, essentially American Beach is a residential community. There's very little to no commercial here to begin with at this point. So why can't that decision go on and just be made to eliminate the commercial and adopt residential only?
And again, I think that's part of the master plan. And I'm glad that people have been encouraging us to stay the course on the master plan, because I think that will be a process that will determine, is there a need for the commercial? How would that impact the residential around it? What are the real world impacts of actually legitimizing that commercial area and allowing it? We already have some people that are interested in one of the properties going to ZRC, even though they really can't do anything at this point in time. So that's a decision for the community to make. I mean, I'm pretty sure that if when does not really want to have the commercial element in the heart of American Beach when it's compounded with the parking problems that you have or the traffic or whatever, then the county would be in a position of essentially putting that back in residential.
You may have made it clearer in your presentation, and maybe I missed it. But it seems to me that a number of things are being pushed to the master plan. So I'm puzzled by what can be done today, freestanding from the master plan, versus what all has to be delayed into some future point for the master plan to be developed, which doesn't appear to be coming in the next 3, 6, or 12 months.
Up to 12 months, yes. But yes, that's why I presented some potential ideas. There are things we can start immediately on. I mean, the lot coverage is one, the view corridor change is one. Several of these tweaks that would kind of limit the amount of scale of new houses, I think we could start right away. It's just that we didn't want to do that without talking to you all, getting some feedback. Those are immediate steps we can take.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, he brought up a great point, right? So, the thing about it right now is, I think there's a lot of building going on, and I'm sure you've been aware, since you're in that position, that we've had some issues in reference to some of the buildings here on American Beach. I kind of see it point as Andre sees it in reference to there are certain things that we probably need to get in effect fairly soon, because if we kind of prolong this, what's going to end up happening is we're going to end up with what we already have here. So, and I mean, it hasn't been a lot of questions in buildings, but as you know, there has been one that's kind of been a thorn. I mean, unfortunately, we just got to live with it. I mean, it's there now. I mean, it's not like we can change it. I mean, personally, I live, right in front of it. So, but, I mean, I think he's got a great point. I think, I don't know how we go about this in order to put this in, maybe not do everything, but maybe some key points or bullet points in reference to lot coverage or, whatever the case might be that I think neighbors need to bring to attention, and then just address these now so that we can kind of control the mass or the amount of building that's going on here on American Beach, and then refine it as we need to, basically. But I don't know how we would go about that. I guess my question to you is, how would we go about that as a community in reference? Will we need a voting system? How would we go about that? Say, for instance, we wanted to change the lot coverage from 45 or whatever, or setback or whatever the case might be. But the most important thing to me, to be honest with you, is kind of the garages. I mean, the garage, most of the houses here look all normal. I mean, just have like one big huge garage. So,
Yeah, I mean,
like that garage thing, I wouldn't think that would be that hard to change, right? I mean, but I'm looking at a garage that's got an 18-foot door on it, and that's 18 feet wide. I mean, it's a commercial garage. I mean, yes, it's not being used as a commercial purpose, but realistically, it's a commercial garage, and you could start a business there if you wanted to. And it's made for an RV. I mean, I don't personally have one, so if I didn't have one, I probably would park it in this neighborhood. That's either here or there.
okay, that's a process question, and I think that the way we would handle this is we would put a package together, essentially, of, I don't want to call them maybe short-term zoning remedies. That's something we could do relatively quickly, and the process is pretty clear-cut. We send it to the planning board, the planning and zoning board, who reviews it and provides a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption. It's a 2 to 3 month process when everything goes right. And I think with community support and assuming what we're presenting is not outrageous and people hate it, I think that would be relatively easy. So that's the process. Sure.
Evans
will be reinstituted to include members of the community to be a part of the planning of the electronic passing park.
I think that's an excellent idea. I mean, I think as much as possible, when the community is willing to work with us, we'll put, we think that's a great idea. I was not aware of the task force, and I'm glad you told me. Good, you back?
Back,
Good morning. Many of the people here today are not aware of the zoning overlay that was done about 15 years ago, which has corrected a lot of these that are in place now that really just needs to be updated. It would save an awful lot of time. The county commissioners approved it, and it covers a lot of these elements that were shared today. So that's something we spoke to Mr. Crow, and he wasn't aware of it, and I was just sort of looking around. There are not many people in the audience today that know anything about the zoning overlay.
I think that's right. It's something that we're going to do. We've already started. We want to talk to you all individually or in groups, whether it's virtually or in person or whatever, before we, and and soon. I mean, we want to make sure what we're going forward with it makes sense to you all and something you're comfortable with. So obviously we can't knock on every door and talk to every single person, but we do want to reach out to as many of you as possible.
My suggestion, if it hasn't already been done, is to forge a group task force and ad hoc committee, possibly out of our American Beach Property Owners Association. Reverend Jones mentioned the groups that had the historical value around what all has already been talked about and put in place and spoken. This group has spoken to the county about it. I don't think we need to recreate the wheel. We'll go ahead and go with what is already in place, but my suggestion this morning would be that we leave this meeting with an organized group who will work with your zoning and whatever your division is called, I'm sorry. And so that we will have an organized message coming from the community, and then members in the community can feed our suggestions to that representative group for our neighborhood to get to you. But I think if we delay this, we're going to miss an opportunity to get a lot of this done. And to Tony's suggestion, some things need to be done right now.
That's a great point. And I think it goes back to working with the community, what we talked about. And I am very happy to work with the Friends of American Beach and any ad hoc committee that we can. I want to do it soon so we can keep moving forward, but that would be a great idea.
to address the question or the comments that Pam has, and that is that the American Beach Property Owners Association has established a task force for zoning, and that information will be fed to the planning department. And that was going to be one of the items on our agenda this morning.
Yes, we have touched base with the group, and we've met with them. We're happy to keep meeting with them. Whether this ad hoc committee is associated with this group or other group, it doesn't really matter to us. We want to be representative and work with folks who have roots here and are really impacted by this, so we're happy to do that.
I just want to again comment that this is the benefit of having the homeowners association board, because we did meet with planning prior to this meeting, and one of the reasons we strongly suggested that you not piecemeal it is because what you approve for one, so let's assume you're looking at Gregg Street. What is good for Gregg Street doesn't necessarily have to be good for Mary and the others. And recognizing, and unfortunately they were not aware that there's a plan already in place that the neighborhood has worked on. So to Joyce's credit, she's appointed a committee so that we can go and dust off and introduce to those who don't know that there's an existing plan that was developed by the community, and then work cooperatively with them to try and get it done sooner than later.
residents just is not being done, are not being orchestrated so that we can get something put in place. Because what I'm hearing is that there's several things that's going on right now that will affect each and every property owner of this residential community. And right now, we're moving forward with parks, recreation, so forth and so on, and we still haven't established what a residential lot will actually look like moving forward. That's imperative that is done now because of what has happened just recently. And what we're trying to convey to the planning department is that you do have concerned citizens here that think those are the things that are of utmost importance. And we need to get that done now before one other property comes in that doesn't meet the ongoing criteria of this residential neighborhood.
I think that's a great comment, and I've been informed by the people that I work for that if we don't get this going and do it right, then I should get my resume out and dust it off. Put it that way. Well,
Well, I think we can do it right and timely, right? So I don't think I think those two things can be compatible with one another, especially given the depth of thought and development that's gone into all this stuff. I find it somewhat surprising to hear that there's an overlay plan that's been in existence for some unknown period of time, but yet you have properties being built that supposedly this overlay stuff has addressed, but yet it's still occurring. So is it really just a document or a set of regulations that exist, but they really aren't in effect? I don't know what the situation really is, and I don't know what it attains. I've heard people use the term overlay before, but it seems to me that we can do speed and quality at the same time. And that should be the focus and priority, as Michael just said a minute. I think the idea of a park is really nice, but frankly, if we never have a park, I don't really care. But I do care a whole lot about how development continues. As Tony alluded to, that guy moving that RV in and out of Price Street is going to destroy that section of the street in front of the Willis's property and Tony's property. No doubt about it in my mind. I'm greatly concerned about the notion that so much can be grandfathered in to the point where, in effect, some of these rules really won't even matter. So, and if there's a way to get this going next week, I think that's awesome. That's what we should be trying to do. We should be trying to go super fast as opposed to somewhat cautiously slow. So thanks for your consideration.
I appreciate that. And just to clarify, the overlay zoning, it's on the books. It's basically what's called, there's I think 4 or 5 special American B zoning districts. RS1AB, RG1AB, commercial districts, which aren't really legitimized because of the future land use. So those are in place. Those are on the books. Those are enforced. The problem with them is when they were developed to essentially recognize the character of the neighborhood, which frankly is, small lots, homes that are close to setbacks. And the problem with putting that in place, the reduced setbacks, the higher lot coverage that is now in place, it allows the big homes. And there's no doubt about it.
I don't see
So I think maybe we went a little bit too far, and now we got to come back a little bit, because what you have on the books right now is going to allow what happened on Price Street to happen over and over again. And I will clear my schedule this week to meet with any group so we can get this going. I'm happy to do that.
I'm not so sure Price Street all fell within those overlays. I'm pretty certain it did not. So it just slipped through the county.
Well,
If the county wasn't aware of the overlay plan, then those things will happen.
we are aware of the overlay. I mean, I think
No, I mean as far as when that permit was done.
there
It should have been flagged.
was a lot of scrutiny. I mean, we did the builder, I can't speak to the details of it, I was peripherally involved, maybe more of the planner knows better, but the builder was forced to change some things about it. They did go outside of the rules, and they were forced to comply with the code as it stands. Part of the problem with the code as it stands, I didn't even talk about the cantilever issues. Our building code essentially allows projecting porches to go into the setback. That's another thing we'd like to fix.
I disagree with what you just mentioned, that our current regulations would allow for something like that to occur with the onset of the planning board not having a part because of the permitting side of it and allowing things that are being permitted in this community to be done outside and never reviewed. I think that's exactly why we fell into reviewing this guy's property, making some adjustments to it because people got involved and started asking the question why, instead of my department asking why. And when this is exactly what my neighbors are talking about right now. There's nothing that precludes us from moving forward on establishing things that need to be done with our properties and setbacks and what have you right now. Last time I came to a meeting, I talked about that 5-foot setback that we're trying to go back to. Why in the heck would we move from a 15-foot front setback to a 5-foot setback is beyond me. Especially when you're trying to improve roadways and what have you, put in sidewalks, put in light poles and what have you. Those kind of things are what we're expecting our planning department to be focused on. Seriously. Not the park. The thing is, we need to have you guys recognize what we want first and foremost and start putting it into place. Because what's going to happen as that house got built or being built is that's going to be the norm instead of the exception if we don't put in place plans and restrictions right now. Because basically, if you move that front setback to 5 feet, that allows for an individual to cantilever into the roadway. 15 foot doesn't.
I agree with you. I think we're on the same page. I mean, I think it was the intent with past staff to move forward with the reduced setbacks. It's not my intent anymore. Who else?
Simple question. We're in the process of getting our plans, permit our plans, excuse me. And that north and south and the 25 feet, how would that affect our house, the new construction and stuff? Because our house is like 30, actually I guess it's built on the slope, so we have to take percentage from the front and the back street, and I think it's like 22 feet, so our house wouldn't go up like 35 feet because we kind of like a medium or whatever. But anyway, how would that affect our house being built and stuff, the 25 feet or foot, whatever, per se?
If you are actively engaged in the process of submitting designs and plans and discussing with county building staff what you're going to do, you would be considered vested, so it would not affect you. But I think it's important in your case to make sure that you have submitted those plans, discussed with the staff, moving forward so that you can legitimately say you're vested. If someone just says, I've been thinking about building my dream home for years and years, that's not vesting. You need to take some concrete steps.
No, I got it.
Anything else?
I just want to say one last thing. This community is really asking for your help and your support in putting together a concise plan to help preserve this area. Preserve what is actually here. And we're not asking to go grandiose or anything, just preserve what has been established, and we can move forward with the building and the parks and this, that, and the other, the water and sewer, but we do want to make sure that we just limit the amount of overbuild that's actually being done simply because everyone has access to this area. I go up and down the roadways and see all these signs of no parking. That's okay. Just come close. Sorry. 5 years ago, that wasn't in existence because this particular piece of property wasn't in play, so to speak. Nowadays, everyone's gravitating to it. You're seeing everyone walking around. You're seeing everyone driving, looking for property, this, that, and the other. And basically, all these signs of no parking on the side of the road basically indicates everyone's coming to this area. I have a piece of property here that I can't even drive on the beach. But yet, everybody in the community can. I think we've got some serious issues here that we're asking for your support and your belief in this community to try and resolve.
I agree, and of course, you have to let us know. I mean, because
I think we
can't
have
do it on our own.
several times.
Yeah.
It's just that we keep coming to this forum. And I drive from Jacksonville to get here, and I'm sorry I'm late this morning. But I come here expecting to hear that kind of information. Not something a little bit down the road, in my thinking.
Well, I think that's something that we talked about the other day, which is we really do want to pursue the short-term fixes that we can do right now and the master plan. I think they're both equally important. We just need to get on the same page with the community about what we're going to move forward with, and we can do that over the next week or two. I'm fairly sure.
Yeah. I think we, like you said, it just need to get together.
Yes, sir. Anybody else?
At the risk of getting thrown out of here, I gotta say that over the last several years, the county has been more involved with American Beach than it was many years ago. The county has worked with us on a lot of issues. They've created a lot of committees to help with. And we knew several months ago that the overlay was being looked at. In fact, I think, what was her name? Adrian told us months ago that it was being looked at and that we needed to talk about it. She never did set that meeting focused on the county because I think some other issues came up. But all I'm saying is I really appreciate the assistance and the attention that you guys have given us over the last couple of years.
We appreciate that. This community is a treasure, and the county is going to do everything it can to protect it and stand with it. But we just want to make sure that we're not on the horse way in front of the community. We want to be there together moving forward. So I think that's why we're here. And we're very accessible. You can email us or call us anytime with your concerns, comments, questions. This is our #1 priority.
When can we see this overlay?
Beg pardon?
When can we see the overlay?
The short term, the zoning tweaks that we're talking about, if we can successfully meet with the community and vet them essentially, we can have a package ready in a few weeks.
Are you talking about the existing overlay? Yes. That you can find on the property appraiser's site.
Yeah, that's correct. The zoning code, if you look at the land development code and then you go to within that zoning districts, you'll see there's about 4 or 5 classifications and it lays it out the way it is now. With lot coverage, the setbacks, the height, everything else. There's other things, building type related things we probably be looking at too, like the canopy.